In tonight's headlines, King Abdullah of Jordan holds talks in Ramallah to try to revive Israeli-Palestinian talks. And Russian President Vladimir Putin arrives in Severomorsk to pay tribute to 118 sailors of the sunken submarine Kursk.
Good evening and welcome to tonight's news. I am Najwa Asran.
And I'm Ahmed Makki. Thank you for joining us.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. His Highness the Emir Sheikh Jaber al-Ahmed al-Jaber al-Subah received at 9 o'clock this morning at Bayan Palace the credentials of 3 newly appointed ambassadors to the state of Kuwait. First, the Regional Commissioner of the International Committee of the Red Cross, His Excellency Ambassador Michel Millière. Then the Ambassador of the Republic of the Comoros Islands, His Excellency Hamid Karhila. And finally, the Ambassador of New Zealand, His Excellency Douglas Frederick Lawrence Marks. The credentials receiving ceremony was attended by the First Deputy Premier and Foreign Minister, Sheikh Subah al-Ahmed al-Jaber al-Subah, the Minister of the Emiri Diwan Affairs, Sheikh Nasser Mohammed al-Ahmad al-Subah, the Emiri Diwan's Under-Secretary, Director of His Highness Emir's Office, the Emiri Diwan's Under-Secretary for Protocol and Ceremonies Affairs, the Head of the Emiri Guard, and the Foreign Minister's Acting Director of the Protocol Department.
Still in local news, the Deputy Premier and Defense Minister, Sheikh Salim al-Sabah, this morning decorated a number of officers with their new ranks in conformity with the degrees of His Highness the Emir, the Supreme Commander of the Armed Forces. Colonel Fahad al-Yusuf al-Sabah from the Emiri Guard was also promoted in line with an exceptional Emiri degree. During a speech he delivered on the occasion, the Deputy Premier and Defense Minister called on the new officers to abide by the spirit of their military oath and to fulfill their commitments of loyalty and courage, wishing them every success and to Kuwait glory and prosperity under the lofty leadership of His Highness the Emir and His Highness the Crown Prince and Prime Minister.
And moving on to regional news, Jordan's King Abdullah held in-depth talks with the Palestinian president in Ramallah today, during which he reiterated his country's support for Palestinian rights. The Jordanian Foreign Minister Abdel Ilah Al-Khatib said Jordan would not accept Israeli sovereignty over the holy places in Jerusalem, which he said was an Arab right, stressing that Security Council Resolution 242, which calls for Israeli withdrawal from the territories Israel has occupied in 1967, applies to East Jerusalem as well. King Abdullah arrived in Ramallah this morning at the head of a high-ranking Jordanian delegation that included, in addition to Al-Khatib, Prime Minister Ali Abu Ragab and Chief of Staff Faiz Al-Tarawna. From Ramallah, the king flew by helicopter to Tel Aviv, where he was welcomed by the Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak and Israeli dignitaries. Barak and Abdullah met last week in Amman and also held talks 3 months ago in the Israeli port city of Eilat on the Gulf of Aqaba. The Israeli Haaretz Daily today quoted unofficial Palestinian sources as saying that Abdullah's visit would include a series of Jordanian proposals on the issues of Jerusalem and borders.
Jordan is committed to help bring about a peaceful solution to the Arab-Israeli conflict. We have suffered for
Turning out to other news, environmental pressure group Greenpeace demanded today that the stricken Russian nuclear submarine Kursk be recovered from the depths of the parent sea to prevent leaks of radiation. The group also called on all countries with nuclear-powered vessels to withdraw them from service. Greenpeace said the submarine should be raised intact if possible. Meanwhile, the Kremlin said the Russian President Vladimir Putin arrived at the Northern Fleet's home base of Severomorsk today to take part in a ceremony mourning 118 sailors who died on the sunken Kursk submarine. Around 500 relatives of the crew are seeking to visit the site of the disaster, which took place on August 12. Putin has been strongly criticized at home and abroad for not interrupting his holiday after the crisis broke and for taking too long to request foreign aid. More in the following report.
After official confirmation of the loss of the entire 118-man crew of the nuclear submarine Kursk, Admiral Vyacheslav Popov, commander of the Russian Navy's Northern Fleet, made a televised apology to the sailors' families late last night, stressing that the entire crew bears no fault for the catastrophe. Russian officials have given several theories to explain why one of the country's most modern submarines, the Kursk, sank on August 12th. One theory proclaims that a foreign submarine collided with the Kursk. Another speculation states that the Russian submarine may have hit a landmine dating back to World War II. And the final theory claims that an explosion of a torpedo or another Russian weapon probably sank the Kursk. The Russian government has been severely criticized for its handling of the tragedy, especially over the fact that it took so long to accept Western offers of assistance to rescue the trapped crew. The Russian media in particular was not in a forgiving mood. President Putin's leadership has been especially targeted, the heaviest he has experienced since taking over power at the beginning of the year. The Kremlin said today that President Putin has ordered an official day of mourning to be observed Wednesday for the 118 seamen that died on the sunken submarine. Messages of condolences to Russia have arrived from many states, including Germany, France, Italy, and China, as well as from UN Secretary General Kofi Annan.
Democratic presidential nominee Al Gore returned verbal fire today from Republican foe George W. Bush on the state of the U.S. military. Gore rejected accusations by Bush that under the Clinton-Gore administration, the past 7.5 years, many of the U.S. military's needs have been neglected. The vice president noted the big increase in defense spending and vowed, if elected president, to use the nation's prosperity to keep the military strong.
Let others try to restore the old guard. Our focus is on you and your families and your community and your future. I know one thing about the presidency.
On the other hand, Bush appeared before the 101st Convention of Veterans of Foreign Wars in Milwaukee yesterday and promised if he wins the White House on November 7th, a massive review of U.S. troops deployment overseas, and higher military funding. Bush renewed his call for a $1 billion military pay raise, averaging $750 for each member of the military yearly, and re-enlistment bonuses for men and women with critical skills. This is on top of a 3.7% military pay raise Clinton approved earlier this year. According to a new Washington Post ABC News poll published today, Vice President Al Gore has climbed to a narrow lead following the Democratic National Convention. Gore currently holds a 50% to 45% advantage over Republican nominee Governor George W. Bush among registered voters, the first time he has clearly led in a post-ABC News poll. Bush led Gore by 9% points less than 2 weeks ago, a shift of 14 percentage points in a race that the Republicans had dominated for nearly a year.
Elsewhere, Japanese Prime Minister Yoshihiro Mori has arrived in the southern Indian city of Bangalore for a 3-day visit, which is expected to close a chapter of tension over the country's nuclear tests in 1998 and help forge closer economic ties. Mori also addressed leaders of India's technology firms and extended an invitation to India's software industry to do more business in Japan. Yesterday in Pakistan, the second country on Mori's foreign nation swing across South Asia, assured the Japanese premier that it would not break its unilateral moratorium on further testing unless New Delhi broke its moratorium first.
これから日本とインドはお互いに IT 関係で補完をし合って素晴らしい
Still to come ahead in tonight's news, Japan and North Korea try to establish diplomatic ties and talks held in Tokyo. And British troops restore calm in Northern Ireland after a night of clashes in Belfast.
Japanese and North Korean negotiators vowed today to try to establish diplomatic ties, but hopes for a breakthrough looked dim as the long-time foes stuck to entrenched positions on key issues. On the first of 2 days of talks in Tokyo, North Korea repeated its call for Japan to apologize and pay reparations for its harsh 1910 to 1945 rule of the Korean Peninsula. Japan returned by raising the sensitive issue of 10 Japanese citizens Tokyo believes were kidnapped by North Korean agents in the past. Demands mean the second round of normalization talks look difficult. Previous talks have foundered on both issues raised today, and some observers say only top leaders could make the key decisions needed to break the bilateral stalemate.
In another major topic, British troops restored an uneasy calm to Northern Ireland's capital today after sporadic overnight violence between protesting guerrilla groups followed a day of bloodshed and arson. Troops set up checkpoints and patrolled parts of the capital as a violent feud between protesting guerrillas threatened to spiral out of control and damage Northern Ireland's peace process after 2 men who had links to the Loyalist Ulster Defence Association, UDA, were shot dead yesterday. They were shot by a lone gunman as they walked to their car outside a pitting shop. In a separate incident, shots were fired at several homes of members of the Progressive Unionist Party, PUP, which has close links to Ulster Volunteer Force, UVF guerrillas. And in the same area of Belfast yesterday, shots were fired at the offices of the Ulster Democratic Party and the offices of the Progressive Unionist Party, both Protestant pro-British loyalist groups. The PUP offices were also set on fire. Britain said it would act firmly to stamp out the violence in the province, where politicians from the Protestant majority and Roman Catholic minority are trying to seal a lasting peace.
Opposition leader and Nobel laureate Aung San Suu Kyi urged the world's students to put pressure on their governments to push for democracy in Myanmar. In a rare videotaped interview released today, Suu Kyi said during a forum on education in Myanmar's capital Yangon on Monday that the recent reopening of universities in Myanmar did not represent progress. She said there had been complaints that curricula had been changed and there was uncertainty about the length of university terms and when exams would take place. Suu Kyi said education in Myanmar would not improve until the country adopted democracy. Suu Kyi's National League for Democracy won elections in May 1990 by a landslide, but has never been allowed to govern.
Take place, so there are more questions than answers about the reopening of the universities.
Peru's President Alberto Fujimori said last night Peruvian authorities had busted a major international arms smuggling ring that parachuted thousands of weapons into neighboring war-torn Colombia to supply leftist rebels. Fujimori said the operation highlighted growing concerns that the conflict could intensify and spill into Peru, just as Washington prepares to give $1.3 billion in aid to Colombia to support its war on drugs. Authorities arrested 6 people, including 3 former Peruvian military officials and a Russian who had smuggled some 10,000 Kalashnikov automatic rifles over the last year from Jordan to Colombia, with a stop in Peru's Amazon in one of the biggest armed busts in Peru. Colombia has been ravaged by 3 decades of fighting between Marxist rebels, outlawed ultra-right paramilitary gangs, and state security forces that has killed more than 35,000 people, mostly civilians, in the last 10 years.
The first Colombian drug kingpin to be extradited to the United States in a decade appeared in Manhattan federal court yesterday to face conspiracy, cocaine and money laundering charges that could put him in jail for life. 44-year-old Albert Olandros Gamboa, the alleged leader of one of Colombia's most powerful drug cartels, arrived in New York late Friday night after being extradited from Bogota. He had been held in a Colombian prison since June 1998, awaiting trial on murder and kidnapping charges. Orlando's, nicknamed the Snail, was charged in a 3-count indictment last year for allegedly running the Caracol organization based in Barranquilla on Colombia's Caribbean coast. The charges filed in Manhattan federal court alleged he directed shipments of thousands of kilograms of cocaine to Miami, Philadelphia, New York City, and other U.S. and European cities between 1996 and 1999. If convicted, Orlando's could face a maximum sentence of life imprisonment.
Distribution of hundreds of thousands of kilos of cocaine.
Elsewhere, wildfires have continued to devastate the western United States, with the most intense fire devouring over 17,000 acres of Palomas National Park in Northern California. Firefighters across the western United States took advantage of calmer winds today in their battle against blazes that have showed little mercy in the worst fire season in nearly 50 years. Fire officials said there were 89 large fires burning nearly 784,000 hectares in 8 western states, Texas and Florida. The hardest hit states remained Montana and Idaho, where a combined 486,000 hectares are on fire. Firefighters from Canada, Mexico and as far away as Australia and New Zealand are also working to help contain fires expected to burn for months.
Hurricane Debbie, a Category 1 storm with the potential to gain strength, was headed towards Puerto Rico today. The U.S. National Hurricane Center reported that it could pose a threat to the United States in the last part of the week, but it is too early to determine for sure. Winds of 120 kilometers per hour, minimum strength for a hurricane, with higher gusts may become stronger over the next 24 hours. The agency said hurricane warnings were posted from Guadeloupe to Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic. A hurricane watch was posted for Haiti. Across the northeastern Caribbean region, which has suffered the impact of several big storms in recent years, people prepared for the potential onslaught, protecting their homes by boarding windows, buying emergency supplies such as batteries, and filling gas tanks.
In Japan, Mount Oyama on the island of Miyakajima, about 200 kilometers south of Tokyo, erupted on a small scale this morning, sending smoke as high as 1,800 meters into the air. Japan's meteorological agency said the eruption of the 813-meter sent mist-like ash falling onto the southeastern Subota district and Maiki port on the east part of the island. No volcanic cinders were seen. About 300 members of the ground Defense Force began piling sandbags near marshes in the island to prevent mudslides. Mount Oyama last erupted on Friday when it sent a column of smoke more than 8,000 meters into the air, and more than 2,000 of the 3,800 Miyakajima islanders were evacuated.
David Schuyler, a former British spy, returned to Britain of his own free will after spending 3 years in self-imposed exile in France. He was promptly arrested by Scotland Yard upon arrival in Dover yesterday and stands accused of treason. The former intelligence agent flouted secrecy laws when he claimed in 1997 the two M16 agents were part of a plot to assassinate Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi. Fleeing to France, London tried to arrange to have him extradited from France, and Schuyler was imprisoned in Paris for 4 months in 1998 until the French courts rejected Britain's extradition request. Now facing trial in Britain, Schuyler claims his case will add momentum to campaigns to change the laws which regulate the activities of the British intelligence services. Before leaving from Calais, Schuyler admitted having revealed confidential information, but claimed that this did not contravene the oath of silence contained in the Official Secrets Act, which many agents have to take when being taken on by intelligence.
And reform the accountability of the security services.
No use imposing legal obligations on people who work for the secret services.
And in our final story tonight, environmental group Greenpeace today kicked off its pre-Olympics protests. The protest in Homebush Bay in Sydney's western suburbs was a bid to show that more needed to be done to clean up the site, which was used as a dumping ground for poisonous dioxin between 1949 and 1976. Greenpeace claims the New South Wales state government has not done enough to live up to a 1997 commitment to stage a Green Games from September 15. Greenpeace campaigners, glad to protective suits, also inspected 69 barrels of hazardous waste at the old factory site across a river from Homebush Bay. The group claims some of the dumps are corroding due to prolonged storage.
Please stay tuned for the weather report with Jamal Ibrahim.
Good evening, everybody. We take you on a quick tour with our weather forecasts. Hot and humid weather will extend till Saturday. Southeasterly wind will be light for this evening. Tomorrow, humid weather, especially at the coastal area. The wind will be between 10 to 30 kilometers per hour with a maximum 48 to 46 with a minimum of 32 degrees Celsius in Kuwait and Abdali 49 and 31. Warba will be on Failak Islands 46 and 33. Garo Kubbar Al Maradin 45 and 34. Sunrise will be at 5:20, sunset will be at 6:21, Fajr prayer time will be at 3:57. First high tide will be at 4:30 a.m., second one will be at 6 p.m., first low tide will be at 11:30 a.m., second one will be at 11:30 p.m. 5-day extended forecast temperature will be ranging between 48 to 45 through Saturday, with a minimum will be ranging between 31 to 32. Hot and humid weather as this low pressure system remains in our area will bring southeasterly flow. And to far east, we can see two cold fronts. One over eastern part of Japanese island. There will be some rain over northern part and more rain over eastern part of China. Another typhoon, Belize, will be approaching to southeastern part of China and Indonesia with heavy strong winds and heavy rain extended all the way to southern part of Indian subcontinent. And to Africa, we can see high pressure up north and south, more thunderstorms activity over the equator. And to Europe, we can see some rain expected over France and low pressure system over England. Have nice and pleasant weather over middle part and eastern part of Europe, high pressure system over the Scandinavians, and to the United States you can see a high pressure system over the west. More rain expected from southern part of Great Lake area, Ohio all the way to North Carolina, and clear skies over Florida. Thanks for watching us. Now we go back to Najwa and Ahmed.
Thank you, Jamal. This concludes this edition of the 7 o'clock news. Thank you for being with us and have a good night. I'm Ahmed Makki.
And I'm Najwa Asram. Before we go, we remind you once again of tonight's main stories and wish you a very pleasant evening.
Good night.
King Abdullah of Jordan holds talks in Ramallah to try to revive Israeli-Palestinian talks. Russian President Vladimir Putin arrives in Severomorsk to pay tribute to 118 sailors of the sunken submarine Kursk. Japan and North Korea try to establish diplomatic ties in talks held in Tokyo. And British troops restore calm in Northern Ireland after a night of clashes in Belfast.
Kuwait Airways departures for Wednesday. KU 551 to Damascus at 8:55. KU 561 to Amman at 9:05. KU 547 to Luxor at 9:15. KU 103 to London at 12 o'clock. KU 617 to Doha, Abu Dhabi at 12:55. KU 785 to Jeddah at 1:40. KU 545 to Alexandria at 1:45. KU 501 to Beirut at 3 o'clock. KU 771 to Riyadh at 4:20. KU 673 to Dubai at 4:30. KU 613 to Bahrain at 5 o'clock. KU 281 to Dhaka at 9:50. KU 381 to Delhi at 10 o'clock. KU 669 to Dubai, Muscat at 10:10. KU 361 to Colombo at 10:25. KU 203 to Lahore at 10:30. KU 301 to Mumbai at 10:40. KU 411 to Bangkok, Manila at 11:05. KU 201 to Karachi at 11:25. Kuwait Airways arrivals for Wednesday. KU 202 from Karachi at 7 o'clock. KU 382 from Delhi at 7:15. KU 302 from Mumbai at 7:40. KU 670 from Muscat, Dubai at 8 o'clock. KU 362 from Colombo at 9:40. KU 552 from Damascus at 2:50. KU 562 from Amman at 3 o'clock. KU 548 from Luxor at 3:15. KU 786 from Jeddah at 7:20. KU 772 from Riyadh at 7:45. KU 102 from New York, London at 7:50. KU 618 from Abu Dhabi, Doha at 7:55. KU 614 from Bahrain at 8 o'clock. KU 172 from Geneva, Frankfurt at 8:40. KU 674 from Dubai at 9 o'clock. KU 502 from Beirut at 9:15. KU 546 from Alexandria at 9:20. KU 542 from Cairo at 10 o'clock. All passengers are requested to confirm their reservations 72 hours prior to their departure. In case of cancellation, please inform the nearest Kuwait Airways office.